If you walked into an Amish kitchen in the 1800s, you'd miss the most important thing in the room. Because nothing about it looks important. No labels, no supplements, no high-protein anything. And yet, modern nutrition science has spent the last 30 years trying to recreate what was sitting on that table. No marketing, no packaging, just food that actually worked. Here's the part nobody talks about. These people weren't eating healthy. They were just solving for survival, and accidentally built one of the most nutritionally complete food systems ever. No diets, no protocols. They called it Tuesday. And none of it needed to be sold to you. A small group of foods was doing almost all of the heavy lifting. Not trendy, not exotic, and not one of them came in a package. Start with fresh milk, straight from the farm, often consumed the same day it was collected. Not the ultra-processed liquid sitting for weeks in cartons, but something closer to its original form. Rich in complete proteins, calcium, and fat-soluble vitamins like A and D, it delivers dense nutrition in a single glass. And here's where it gets interesting. Despite everything modern processing promises, most of that nutritional value still exists even after pasteurization, because the core structure of milk doesn't change much. What changed wasn't the food itself, it was how far it had to travel before it reached the table. Then there's butter, and this is where the fat story gets uncomfortable. The Amish put it on everything. Cooked into meals, spread thick on bread, melted over vegetables at every sitting. Not because they were indifferent to health. Because it worked. They weren't optimizing nutrition. They were just trying to survive the day. Loaded with butyrate, a short-chain fatty acid that directly feeds the gut lining and keeps inflammation in check. And with K levels that barely appear anywhere in the modern Western diet, it delivers hours of steady, stable energy in a way that the processed vegetable oils, which eventually replaced it, demonstrably do not. Then there are eggs. Backyard chickens meant fresh eggs daily. Not transported across 3 states, not weeks old, not produced under conditions that affect nutritional density, consumed whole, yolk, and included. That last part matters because the yolk is where almost everything useful lives. Complete protein with all 9 essential amino acids, choline that directly supports brain function and memory, and nutrients that support eye health and hormone balance. Removing the yolk, which became fashionable decades later, strips the egg down to roughly a quarter of its original value. Now here's where the system reveals itself. Those first 3 were the fresh foods. The next 3 were something else entirely, and they're the ones that reveal what the Amish were actually doing without knowing the terminology for it. Now, add fermented sauerkraut, eaten at nearly every meal, not as a condiment, as a staple. Naturally fermented over days using nothing but salt and thyme, it produced live bacterial cultures of a diversity that modern probiotic supplements cost $30 to $80 a month. Billions of strains listed on the label largely fail to match. The gut benefits weren't the point. Preservation was the point. A cabbage harvest in October had to last through February. Fermentation was the answer. The microbiome effects were a side effect of solving a storage problem. They weren't trying to build gut health. They were just trying not to starve in winter. Then comes meat, chicken, beef, and pork, raised on the same land it was eaten from, not shipped across states or processed beyond recognition. This wasn't just protein, it was fuel. Animals were raised slowly, fed simply, and used completely. Nothing wasted. Tough cuts weren't discarded, they were slow cooked for hours, turning into meals that delivered dense nutrition and sustained energy in a way fast cooked, lean cuts rarely do. And this is where it gets interesting, because the goal wasn't optimization. It was survival. The result was meat that fit into a system, not a diet, quietly supporting strength, recovery, and long days of physical work. Then came the desserts. Homemade pies baked from whatever was already in the kitchen, not engineered for shelves, but made to be eaten the same day. Apple pie when fruit was in season, and when it wasn't, something like choufle pie, built from molasses, flour, and fat, ingredients that didn't spoil and didn't need refrigeration. And this is where it gets interesting, because these weren't indulgences in the modern sense. They were practical solutions. Sugar wasn't excess, it was energy. Dessert wasn't separate from the meal, it was part of it. Simple ingredients, layered carefully, turning scarcity into something that felt like abundance, without ever pretending to be more than it was. That's the detail most people miss when they tell this story. The Amish did not have a health philosophy. They were solving logistics. preservation in autumn for a winter ahead, waste reduction from animals that represented months of labor, fuel density for physical work that started before dawn and ended after dark. The nutritional outcomes were downstream consequences of doing those practical things carefully. Which brings us to the next four, and these are the ones that got replaced most aggressively. Then come the oats slow-cooked into porridge every morning, not processed into something shelf-stable and sweet. Whole oats contain roughly 4 grams of beta-glucan fiber per serving, a compound directly linked in clinical research to lower LDL cholesterol, and, more importantly for daily function, to slowing digestion enough that blood sugar stays level for hours. No spike, no crash. Exactly the energy profile you need if your morning involves genuine physical work rather than a commute. Then comes bread, homemade, baked fresh in kitchens where buying it was never the default option. Not sliced, packaged, and preserved for weeks, but mixed, kneaded, and eaten the same day. Soft, dense, and filling, designed less for taste and more for function. And this is where it gets interesting, because bread wasn't just a side, it was the foundation. It held meals together, stretched ingredients further, and made sure no one left the table hungry. Spread with butter, topped with jam, or used to carry everything else, it quietly did the heavy lifting, turning simple ingredients into something that could sustain an entire day of work. And then the most unglamorous part of the system, root vegetables, potatoes, carrots, and beets, stored through winter in cellars and present at almost every meal. Unglamorous, consistent, fiber-rich in ways that slow digestion and sustain energy without spikes. Dense enough in nutrients to form the backbone of survival food when nothing else was available, quietly feeding the gut microbiome in the background of every meal. Root vegetables aren't exciting, which is probably why they don't appear in modern wellness content very often, and probably also because they've been eaten continuously by every agricultural society in human history. And finally, then come the vegetables, not imported, not available year-round, but grown in the same soil they were eaten from. Cabbage, beans, corn, and squash, planted in season, harvested at peak, and used immediately or preserved for what came next. And this is where it gets interesting, because freshness wasn't a luxury, it was the default. What couldn't be eaten was canned, dried, or stored carefully to last through winter without spoilage. The goal wasn't variety, it was reliable. These weren't side dishes, they were the backbone, quietly sustaining entire families, season after season, without ever depending on anything beyond the land itself. Every single one of those 10 things was doing more than one job. The dish wasn't food. This item was an operating system. Sauerkraut preserved the harvest and built the gut. Bone broth is made from the animal parts that would otherwise be discarded and produces the most nutrient-dense food in the kitchen. Vegetables were the foundation, and the storage system. Root vegetables held the energy and the winter supply. The system was interlocking. Nothing existed for a single purpose. Nothing was wasted. And the economics were, as a result, almost invisible. Not because the Amish were wealthy, but because every item was a byproduct of something they were already doing for another reason. If that food culture had a personality, it would be that quietly meticulous neighbor who never buys anything twice, never wastes a single trip, and somehow has a more functional house than anyone else on the street. Not because they spend more, but because they never stop doing the things that work. What's expensive now is the attempt to reconstruct, supplement by supplement, what they never had to think about losing. Now here's where the story takes a turn that should feel uncomfortable. Somewhere in the middle of the 20th century, the Western food system looked at almost everything on that table and started replacing it, piece by piece. Butter was replaced with margarine. Milk was regulated out of common use. Fermented foods shrank to a fraction of the daily diet. Bone broth disappeared from mainstream cooking. Whole eggs became a cardiovascular risk. Milk became standardized and stripped of its original context, which is the polite way of calling something unscientific without disproving it. Each switch made sense when evaluated in isolation. And that's exactly where things started breaking. Cheaper fat, safer milk at an industrial scale, more consistent eggs, longer shelf life on everything. Every decision made by someone optimizing one variable. None of them was accountable for what the cumulative substitution did to the table as a whole. By the time nutrition science started publishing research that rehabilitated saturated fat, confirmed the gut microbiome's central role in immunity and mental health, documented the oxidative instability of seed oils at high heat, and verified what acetic acid actually does to post-meal blood sugar, most of what it was confirming had been sitting in Amish kitchens, undisturbed, for 2 centuries. Not as a trend, not as a protocol, just as food. The Amish didn't create a health system, they didn't invent a better system, they just never replaced the one that worked. And somewhere along the way, we did.